Okay.
All right, recording is in progress. Fantastic. I do just want to take one quick moment too to acknowledge that Nicole Umayam is with us, and she will have a few slides at the beginning of the presentation, so she'll also get to hear from her. I'll let her introduce herself momentarily. But before Steve has me say it, I'm going to say it. My name is Erin Lorandos, and I'm the Digital Equity Program Manager at the Arizona Commerce Authority. I joined the ACA just in November, right at the spot to help push the digital equity plan across the finish line. So, I have to give credit to the amazing work that the rest of the team and our contractors, and of course Cindy, when she was with ACA, did to get the plan, into the space that I was able to pick it up and take it just the last few yards. So. I just want to acknowledge that this is a very big group effort, and everyone is playing such an important role. So I'm going to go ahead and start my slideshow here, and then I will pass it off to Nicole for the first little bit here. Let me just push all the buttons. Okay.
And while you're doing that, Nicole, I apologize. I should have introduced you early on too.
It will get there. It's no problem.
Oh, you know what? Just realized. Okay, sorry. I have to share screen and then do that. Geez, I need a digital navigator, you guys. Okay. All right, you don't need to see my email. All right, here we go. And hold on, let me swap here. There we go. All right. I think everybody should be seeing the actual presentation now, which is fantastic. And so once again, we're going to be spending some time today talking about our digital equity plan. The information that I've copied over to the slides is definitely being copied over to the slides. So always refer to the actual plan, when you're making your comments. And I'm going to go ahead and click next. Nicole, if you want to just tell me when you're ready to switch slides, I'll be happy to do that for you.
That's good. I'm hearing a little bit of a background noise.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
Mary.
if everybody could just stay on mute, unless you'd like to add to the conversation. Of course, just go ahead and raise your hand or stop us. But overall, if we can keep the other people muted, that would be fantastic. Awesome. Thanks so much. All right, Nicole, it's all you.
Great. Sounds good. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Nicole Umayam. I'm the Federal Program Officer for Arizona with NTIA. I live here in Phoenix, and I love being able to serve Arizona and work with my many communities here. So in my role, I'm really one part grant administrator, one part broadband office support, and many parts stakeholder engagement and supporting all the initiatives to get the goal of internet for all achieved here in Arizona. Really what that means is implementing the two different grant programs, the BEAD and the Digital Equity Act grant programs that were established in the 2021 bipartisan infrastructure law. So I'm starting with this slide because these are the covered populations that were dictated by Congress in that bipartisan infrastructure law. And it's these covered populations that the plan is always having to point back to, and that over this year-long planning process, the state has had to work with specific ways that these populations are impacted by digital inequity and come up with actionable solutions. So, maybe by the time you finish reading the plan, you'll have these 8 memorized, but these are the ones that are specifically required in the statute to be addressed throughout the plan. So everything comes back to these ones. And you can see it is quite broad. So all rural inhabitants, there's, from my opinion, there's not a lot that binds that population besides the fact that they happen to live in a designated rural area. But even so, issues of broadband access, adoption and affordability, there's some unique interventions for people who live in rural areas versus those in urban areas. And the same case goes for supporting all of these covered populations. And I think the plan does a really good job of talking about the intersectionality of individuals who might belong to more than one covered population, and even exploring ones that aren't explicitly named here. And Erin and I love to have those conversations with all of you as well. We can go to the next one, Erin.
There we go.
So there are 15 requirements that the plan has to address, and these are reviewed by a team of internal reviewers at NTIA for each state. And it's actually quite a lengthy technical assistance process throughout the year. And once we get into the reviewing phase, really kind of exacting guidance on making sure that things are worded and framed in an appropriate way, and always with an eye towards action. This state plan is informing the future work of digital equity and how the state may implement their capacity funds to pull off all of these activities. So NTIA's emphasis is on making sure that the proposed activities, the proposed means of engagement are all spot on and set us up for success. So it's a involved process, but we wanted to share the requirements first, so you get a sense of how reviewers think of the plan, how the authors have been thinking of the plan, and then how you all are thinking of the plan as well. So the first half of these programs here, you'll see those covered populations mentioned for most of these. So, the first step is really to make sure that there are identified barriers for each covered population. And that literally means at least one barrier identified for each of the 8 covered populations. So that's something that we look at carefully. And I think you'll be interested in those discussions, and in Arizona's county approach that we'll take a look at. One of the key requirements is requirement 2. So this is the measurable objectives. And so we'll see sort of these broad goals and the action steps inside. And they do have to address all 8 of those covered populations and consider these 5 different areas, 5 or more different areas on top of those covered populations. So, what does broadband technology access look like for veteran populations in particular? So we'll look over those. An interesting section in the top is how all of these objectives interact with the state's broader goals. So you'll see Governor Hobbs' state goals for her administration. You'll see reference to the statewide workforce plans, different health plans, and how the state's digital equity planning has incorporated those relevant contours into the plan here. Another interesting section is the plans for collaboration. This actually comes later in the plan, but it's you'll see the stakeholders that are involved in the planning process, and then the intention to continue to work with what we call key stakeholders in implementing all of these programs. Requirement 5 is a literal list of partners throughout this process, which is a little different than the sort of assessment of key players and future work. Requirement 6, that's the state's vision for digital equity. So similar to a vision and mission statement from a major organization. So this is all informed through the planning process as well. The needs assessment, so this is a little different than barriers by a covered population. This is looking at the players on the ground, the strengths and the assets that existing programs, existing counties, different organizations already bring to the table, and just getting a lay of the land. So somebody can read this section and understand who's doing what in Arizona. And obviously that helps us in the planning process. We can move over to the next one, Erin. So similarly, the asset inventory, this is sectioned together. So there are little, one of them is a little bit more text-based, and then the asset inventory, I believe, is in the appendix. And that's trying to be the most comprehensive listing as possible. We also have the coordination and outreach strategy, which I think will be of interest to this group. So the ways that the broadband office intends to continue working with all sorts of stakeholders and the pacing available there. It's also accounting for all of the existing local digital equity or digital access related plans, and reviewing those and discussing how that has helped inform the plan that we're going to take a look at. Importantly, the implementation strategy. So this is really getting down to the core activities of those big goals and objectives that we've seen. So then looking at, well, what does that look like? And even asking to have a quarter by quarter breakdown of what those activities look like, including the updating and the evaluation of this plan and updating this plan as we go. There's also looking at making sure that this strategy is really addressing gaps. So we sort of see that throughout Arizona's plan. It is required for the state to also talk broadly about how their implementation strategy is partnering with workforce and labor organizations and institutions of higher learning and other public service entities as well. So we see that in the plan. The timeline is obviously tied to that implementation strategy. And then the last requirement is the way that the use of funds is going to be coordinated. So this is the BEAD funding as well as other state and federal funding, and how the broadband office intends to make sure that everybody at the table is coordinating so that we can maximize this historic investment. There is a secret 16th, not so secret 16th requirement, and that is the public comment period, which is what we're in now. So the state actually has to by law is required to have a 30-day public comment period so that they can get input from all sorts of stakeholders and everybody involved and impacted by this plan. And they also have to demonstrate to NTIA how they are implementing all of that feedback and collect all those comments. And I've been a reviewer for other state plans, and I know that this is taken very seriously. So I commend you all for being here and participating in this process. And we can't encourage you enough to share your thoughts and your feedback, because it is read, and it is going to impact all of Arizona. So just thank you for being here.
Thank you, Nicole. And, I always love your presentation because you really put it in some context about what the plan needs to include and what it doesn't include, which is that it's not boiling the ocean with every population out there, that there are some specific requirements from NTIA. So I think it's really helpful that you provide this overview.
Thank you. Unless we have questions on this one, I'll let Erin take it away, but I am going to post a link in the chat where you can read all of the posted draft plans from other states if you're curious on how Wisconsin approached some of these things, or California. I'm guessing those are out for public comment now. You can take a look, with the caveat that these are not approved plans. These are draft plans that are just publicly posted.
Okay.
Are there any questions for Nicole? No? Okay.
I have one question. Maybe this is for Erin, but my understanding is that the covered populations, as you alluded to, cover a lot of people. Do you have like a percentage of the state that is covered?
Yes. So in the plan itself, we go into that detail. There's a ton of statistics around the percentage of folks in the state who fall into these categories, or potentially more than one category, as Nicole mentioned. It does, it's a very broad a swath of people for sure. But yes, and we can look at that live if we want to in a little bit.
And
Okay.
I think I know a little bit of the background on that question because Drew, it's a good question. The percentage of covered population actually informs the formula of the capacity money for states, among other things. So it's a good one to pay attention to.
Any other questions?
So Aaron, before we move on, I see, excuse me, that Maggie Ferry has joined the meeting.
Oh, hi,
I'd like to
Maggie.
just give her a minute to say hello and to introduce herself. Maggie, if you would, please.
Hi, sorry not to take away from the study group, but wanted to say hello. My name is Maggie Ferry. I'm the Director of Intergovernmental Affairs for Governor Hobbs, and I run her broadband policy portfolio. So I get to work closely with Aaron and Nicole on and Deep on broadband related activities for the state. I'll pop my email in the chat if there's anything that I can do to be helpful. We run working groups for the governor's interagency and community broadband advisory council once a month. So if you'd like to join or learn more about that, please reach out.
And I did include the information about those meetings and when they take place in my email announcement about this meeting. So if you're interested in joining, the information is there, as well as the contact information for Maggie. So Maggie's an important part of this process. She didn't make that quite as clear, but she's an important part of this process, an important part of the team. So with that, Aaron, I'm going to go back to you.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, let's dive into the plan a little bit. So our plan kicks off with an executive summary, which is meant to provide a high-level overview of the contents of the plan and also kind of give a bit of an introduction to the work that we're hoping to do. I have to give credit to Candace. She was instrumental in coming up with the most amazing tagline, I guess, if you want to call it that, as part of the executive summary. And so, of course, you know about Arizona's 5 Cs. We've got copper, cattle, cotton, citrus, and climate. And each of those sectors plays a pivotal role in Arizona's history and as well as its further development. And as we are transcending into this new chapter of the Arizona story, we are stepping into a more connected and digital era, and we are adding a 6th C, connectivity. And I just absolutely love that image. It is the coolest image ever. And Candace, I just have to give you props because it is just the coolest thing ever. We're making t-shirts. I'm not joking.
I want a t-shirt.
You want a t-shirt too? Okay, well, we're gonna do a test run, and then we'll open it up for maybe it'll be maybe, you know what, maybe State 48 would like to make us a connectivity t-shirt, and then there can be funding digital equity in the future. But I wanted to take a moment and talk about that because I think that is a really beautiful image for Arizona. And I love in our plan how we can tell that Arizona story, you know, and you know, as Nicole mentioned, there's obviously plans from every state and many of them are available to read. And that's one of my favorite parts about looking at other states' plans is seeing how they're telling the state's story, not just, you know, the stuff that's required, but the unique aspects that make every state in the country special and unique. So I just wanted to give a moment to that. Yes, Steve.
Aaron, I want to interrupt you for just a second.
That's all
So
right.
there's lots of people on this call that probably should get introduced, but I did want to introduce Drew Gardner. I'll put you on the spot, Drew, but Drew has been partner with us quite a long time, but he has a new job with the Benton Institute. So I thought, Drew, maybe you could just take a minute to talk about your job because you're really into the policy side of things. So want to just take 2 minutes to talk about what you do and so forth.
Happy to. Thanks, Steve. My name's Drew Garner. I work closely with Elena Lowry at Common Sense, my former colleague. I'm now at the Benton Institute for Broadband and Society. I don't want to spoil everything Aaron's going to say, but in case it's helpful for anyone, Benton is doing summaries and articles on all state plans. And we're hoping to have ours on Arizona done sometime early next week. So for the busy people who may not be able to read 200 pages, or the executive summary, which is there too, we'll have something to help you. And then I also work with Mignon Hollis, who's helping to do some coalitional work in Arizona. And we'll be reviewing the plan and hoping to give some positive support to the aspects we like and some feedback to where we think it could be improved. So we look forward to participating in the comment period by deadline February 1.
Thank you, Drew.
Yep.
Sorry, Aaron,
And
didn't mean
actually,
to go off on
no,
a tangent, but he's plays
not
a
at all.
pretty important role.
Yes, he does. No, and that's a fantastic segue. Actually, I hadn't had a chance to say this out loud yet, so I do just want to call out the fact that, you know, while we are having hopefully a very robust conversation during this session today and throughout our other opportunities to dive into the plan, we just want to highlight the fact that we really do need you to formally submit comments so that we can track them and respond to them per the NTIA requirements. So I just wanted to put that out there, and we will go into depth a little later on how to actually submit those comments. There are a number of ways. So, but I do appreciate that, and you know, this can be kind of the time where you think about what comments you might be making, and maybe, you know, kind of test the waters and say them out loud and get feedback here. But you know, we do need them formally submitted as well so that we can track. Okay, thanks so much. All right. Okay, so on that note, let's dive into the goals and objectives of the plan. We will go to the plan live here in a little bit, but I just wanted to bring the goals and objectives and a couple of other sections out onto slides so that they'll be a little bit easier to read, and I don't give anyone motion sickness scrolling through 200 pages of the plan right away in the morning. So you'll notice that the plan kind of identifies a few main buckets of goals, and these kind of speak back to the requirements that Nicole mentioned as well. Oops, sorry about that. I just clicked on the wrong thing. So over the course of the last year, as we mentioned, there's been a comprehensive data collection process with our contractors, which included statewide listening tour, online roundtables, and surveys that were administered both to community members as well as our community anchor institutions, allowing Arizonans that fall into one or more of these covered populations to describe the challenges and barriers that they're facing to digital equity. And we found a number of common barriers that kind of inform these buckets. They fell into categories such as internet cost and stability, concerns about online safety and privacy. There was some themes of general distrust of the government and distrust of the internet. So that kind of speaks to the cybersecurity, the staying safe online, how to navigate those concerns. We also saw a theme of people being interested in getting more support services, digital literacy upskilling opportunities, those informal education opportunities. Device access and affordability came up, of course, and then also physical limitations of a user and how those limitations might affect a person's engagement with the technology and the internet. So to help address these barriers to digital equity, that we've laid out a number of goals and objectives in the plan, and we can dive into those right now. So the first main goal that we identified is to increase the availability and affordability of reliable high-speed broadband internet. So of course, this speaks primarily to the work that the BEAD program is going to be doing, the actual, you know, connections for every Arizonan to the internet, or the availability of that connection at least. This goal has been broken down into a number of objectives, and the first one is to increase enrollment in the Affordable Connectivity Program. I want to pause here just for a moment because, of course, if folks have been following the news, they know that this objective might be a little tenuous now with the current situation around ACP. And I would be more than happy to open this up to have a little bit of a conversation about this. We have many experts on our call around the exact status of things. But generally speaking, if, you know, my top level overview of this is that as we currently stand, we don't have funding for ACP past the first quarter of this year. And there has been guidance provided now by the FCC to wind down this process. And in fact, as currently stands, folks will no longer be able to enroll in ACP for new enrollees past the first week of February. And so obviously these plans have been in the works for a whole year, and a lot of this language was written before those, you know, shoes dropped. And so, you know, this is something that we are looking at, potentially changing our language to include a more general frame. The downside, of course, of that is we really want ACP, you know, to continue, or something very, very similar to it. So I also see a benefit of leaving some of this language in there, because then when it is reviewed at that federal level, you know, it provides support for the continuation of the program. So many plans, especially in the affordability section, rely very heavily on the idea of ACP. And so, you know, that might be a way to prove its importance. You know, we have over 500,000 people in the state that are currently benefiting from ACP. And I love all of the comments that are coming into the chat with all of these people who know way more than I do about the details chiming in. So that's fantastic. And I'll give you guys a moment to speak in a second here too, if you'd like. But, you know, it is a hugely important part of affordability going forward. And, you know, not to go on too much of a tangent, but, you know, it doesn't really matter if people have access to something that they can't afford, right? And if people are, you know, unable to capitalize on that, then that's really going to affect the efficacy of all of these plans and all of these programs that the federal government is supporting. So, so I just wanted to take a moment to that. Drew and or Elena, I see both of you chiming in the chat. If either of you would like to take a moment and say anything about ACP, I would love to hear your viewpoints.
Well, I'll just quickly say that in addition to the wind down, there's also been a bill introduced. It was right around the same time that the FCC guidelines came out about the wind down and the freeze. And so we don't know what's going to happen with the ACP Extension Act. We're hearing that it's kind of been kicked down the road to March. And so the idea is that there will be a transition period between the freeze, and you can still enroll people in ACP up through the time of the freeze, and then the money is slated to run out towards the end of April. So people could at least get 2 or 3 months of the benefit. For those of you that want to know, like, you know, what happens afterward. There are some ISPs that have said that they would keep people on a discounted rate until this is all ironed out. So there's lots of movement and lots of things happening right now around this. And we really don't have any definite answers. Even the FCC doesn't have any definite answers around what's going to happen. So it's not, you know, it's not necessarily all bad news, but it is frustrating, to say the least, for FCC grantees and other folks that have been working on this. But yeah, I don't know if Drew wants to add anything, but I just wanted to mention that that bill that was dropped last week.
I'm sure you've all sort of seen and read this. The one thing I'd encourage you to look out for is on January 25th. That's the day that ISPs are required to notify every enrollee. So all 22.5 million enrollees will get a text or an email or a physical letter, some form of written communication notifying them about the end of the program. I would love to see those notifications. So if anyone is working with enrollees and is able to get a copy of those notices, that would help please share them with me if you can. I'm happy to anonymize them. But I would just like to help sort of see what providers are saying, so that we can make it, because I want to make it clear, the notices are going to be coming from providers, but this is ultimately Congress's decision. Providers aren't the ones who are sneaking the rate up on you. This is still something you can do something about. So we're trying to do advocacy. So January 25th, notices go out. February 8th, enrollment freezes. And at the same time, enrollment freezes, any of the ACP outreach grantees are going to lose access to some of their funding, the FCC grants they've gotten. So I'm sure everyone is already paying attention to that, but the FCC outreach grantees may be the first ones to really feel this financially, in addition to the 25 million households who are shut out of the program, who are eligible but not yet enrolled. So that's all I'll add. Happy to talk more if anyone's interested.
Thanks, Drew.
Thank you so much, both of you, for that. That's a fantastic overview, and there are a bunch of really amazing resources in the chat if you haven't seen that yet. Are there any follow-up questions or comments about ACP generally or this?
Erin, this is Mala.
Hi.
Just a quick hi. Just a quick question, and I'm not sure it was clear in the webinar that FCC had. Can the outreach grant money that has been received be used to send out notifications to the enrollees or something to say, hey, what Drew said, this is not the fault of the service providers. Please approach your Congress or whatever, so since they have some outreach money left that they haven't used, if they can draw it down and use it for that.
Yeah, I mean, the webinars that I've been a part of, that's definitely encouraged. If you have connection with folks who you've helped sign up, or of folks who are enrolled in the program because you've been working with them and as a digital navigator or in a library situation, whatnot. I think that from my perspective, I think that that's an appropriate thing to do. There's probably some more specific guidance about that, about how to phrase that and whatnot. But I think, what Drew said, I think is spot on with that, that this isn't the ISP, and it's going to be a fine line, right? Because historically, I think that's kind of the feel, right? Like, oh, I signed up for a deal and then in a year, the prices go up and all of that. And in this case, it's definitely not that happening at all. So, I mean, from my perspective, I would say, yeah, that if folks have the opportunity to have that conversation with people, that would be good.
Hi, Mariana here from AZBSN.
Hi.
I mean, hey, it's no wonder people have a mistrust of the government when you sign up for a program and then you get dropped, whether or not it's the government or not. But my question is, what kinds of discussions are going on at the state level to create our own version of ACP for the state?
Great question. So actually the next objective, conveniently, I'm just going to switch forward to it because it will give an opportunity for you to look at something new for a while we talk. Objective 2 is to launch and increase enrollment in the BEAD low-cost plan. And so part of our BEAD 5-year action plan and the implementation of that is to create a low-cost plan within Arizona's ISPs and encourage folks to enroll in that as well. Would someone on the team that would like to kind of dive into that a little bit more from the BEAD perspective? And then we'll see if that helps answer Mariana's question. I don't think that there isn't necessarily a way for us to replicate ACP, but this is kind of meant to be in tandem with. So if someone would like to speak to the BEAD side of things, that would be wonderful.
Thank you, Erin. I'll just provide a quick update. So, and Mariana, thank you so much for the question. Our BEAD plan, it's a requirement from NTIA that we have to present an option if there is an situation where ACP goes away. So if you look into our bid plan, I'll post the requirement here. I think it's requirement 18. So we described briefly that the ISPs who's receiving bid funding need to offer a plan for low cost plan. So, and from our standpoint, it was $30, which is also recommended by NTIA. You will see different number in different state. And the speed has to be 100 by 20, and that's the bid requirement. We also said if the ACP goes away, in case of ACP, $30 in regular places, that will wipe off basically all the internet bill for a family, and $75 on tribal land will wipe off the internet bill for a family. So, and we also said in the plan that if ACP goes away during the BEAD deployment, they have to stick to this plan. So if it's a $30 plan, they have to stick with this plan so that families can pay $30 or $75 on tribal land. I understand that this is not an alternative for ACP, but it just something we can still do to keep the pricing within the control. Having saying that, I saw my Maggie's hand up, so I would like to invite Maggie to add a little bit more on top of that.
Go ahead,
Hi,
Maggie.
yeah, thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I was unmuting and putting myself on video, so it took a second. Yeah, so I think certainly, as Sandeep mentioned, a lot of states are in the situation where we're kind of preparing for our planning ahead without the ACP sort of locked in as a future option. So what we've done in the volume 2 proposal that we submitted to NTIA is we've changed the tie to ACP. We've kept the eligibility as those who are eligible for ACP. However, we've changed the price structuring to 35% of the FCC urban benchmark rate, and the 2024 broadband benchmark rate for 100 by 20 was just released in December, and that's 91.24, and so 35% of that is 31. So it does, the low cost plan for BEAD does end up being very close to ACP, which is 31.9. However, we had to tie it to that FCC benchmark rate because ACP is obviously looking like it will no longer be an option, barring any action from Congress.
Thank you, Maggie. Any
Corey, I
questions for
see.
Sandy or Maggie before we move on?
I see Corey's hand.
Yeah, go ahead,
Thanks,
Corey.
Aaron. Hey, Corey Christians, Yavapai County. Just a quick question on the low cost BEAD option if ACP goes away. Sandeep, are you saying that it will be proposals that have an alternative to ACP provided by the broadband provider will be more competitive when considering bids, or is the state going to be funding an ACP alternative?
The BEAD low cost plan is the BEAD low cost plan is required by subgrantees. So subgrantees, the folks who get BEAD dollars, are required to provide that low cost plan. Although there is a piece in the application process as well that makes your application the score higher depending on the affordability of the plans that you offer. However, in terms of sort of the requirements for the lifetime of the network, that's the BEAD low cost plan.
Okay, so if they're required to have a low cost plan to be competitive, or they will not be considered if they don't have a low cost plan?
This is after they are selected. So after they're selected, they're required to provide that low cost plan. And if you're in, and then it's sort of a both and situation. So in the application process, your application will be considered more competitive based on the affordability pieces of the service you provide. And then on the back end, if you are selected as the subgrantee, you are required to provide that low cost plan.
Is that low-cost plan offered to every household in the bead area, or just ones that have a low income?
We used the same eligibility as the ACP. So if a family was eligible for ACP, then that family would be eligible for the BEAD low cost plan if they are covered by a BEAD subgrantee.
Yeah.
So would the ISP be running those requirements, or would that be a state, an Arizona State Department that runs those requirements?
The ISP or the sub recipient.
Okay, okay, thank you.
And I'm just curious about the time frame then, like what are we talking about in terms of if ACP goes away? When does the BEAD program kick in?
That's yeah, I think that's a very valid question. And so if we have, if the projections are correct, the ACP will run out of funding in the spring. I think earlier this week, the FCC said that the last day that folks can apply for the ACP is February 7th or 8th. I'm sure Drew will correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, which I appreciate. And then in terms of what the BEAD build out looks like, so once volume 2 is accepted by NTIA, then which will likely be sometime in the spring, the state has 365 days to get those dollars out to subgrantees. And then the subgrantees have 4 years to build out those networks. And so that's a longer term solution to a short term problem, I suppose.
PJ, I see your hand up.
Yes, good morning. How are you today?
Great, how are you?
Well, I just had a quick question. When it comes to the low cost and those types of selection processes, if the selection process, if I understand correctly, low cost impact would be a requirement after the awardee was selected. Did I understand that part correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and does that qualify also for, as I understand some of the other changes that have come about, which is also discussing wireless? So if wireless is going to be eligible for BEAD, will wireless services also be eligible for BEAD funding?
Yes.
So a provider that may provide the lowest cost may be wireless when a wired connectivity is also available. Is that will that be delineated that the lowest cost of wireless or lowest cost of versus lowest cost of wired connected physical infrastructure? Does that play a part or not at all in weighing out how a low cost plan is effectively evaluated?
The answer is yes. And I think Sandeep is probably the best point of contact. He's kind of dove into this requirement from NTIA and done some really creative work there. Although I don't want to get too off of what Erin is working on with her presentation here. So maybe what we could do is, Philip, I have your contact information. Do you have Sandeep's contact information?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. Maybe the three of us can jump on a call offline and kind of go into the wireless requirements that Sandeep did a really wonderful job breaking out, and he can kind of talk you through it.
Okay, Maggie, I really appreciate it. I was just curious really for the entirety of the group also, just from a standpoint of, low cost carriers for a low cost plan may be effectively some of the least desirable services that we're looking to implement.
Yeah,
so
and
I appreciate it. I would welcome the conversation, and I appreciate it, Maggie. Thank you so much for what you're doing.
Wonderful, yeah. And Sandeep, feel free to chime in.
No, I think this is a digital equity session, so let's just go with that. And Philip, you, me, and Maggie can touch base offline, or probably take the discussion into our monthly roundtable for local government.
Sounds great. Thanks, Sandeep.
I mean, it's also interconnected. I expected this, conversation to include all of the things. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. Okay, so I'm going to go on to the next goal then. You know, the important part about these first couple of objectives with goal 1 is that you know, we are trying to make space for the promotion of you know, an increased enrollment in whatever low cost, high speed, you know, options for internet are available, whatever that looks like past all of this shaking out. And of course, you know, I think Maggie made a really good point that, you know, the timelines for these things are happening all at the same time, but they're on different timelines. And so I think that's an important thing to note. All right, so the next big goal that we set is to increase inclusivity and accessibility of public resources and services. So this goal is broken out into a number of objectives that really kind of speak to online spaces and content being more accessible. You know, and so this is where we start to be able to collaborate with people who know way more than we do, which, you know, is key to the implementation of many of these goals, of course. But you'll see here, implementation for this goal is to collaborate with our experts and advocacy groups and forming task forces around accessibility and speaking with our disability advocates to identify and integrate best practices for digital accessibility. So this kind of starts to speak to that bucket that we saw around, you know, limitations or differently abled accessibility qualities for different folks in the state. And then, of course, we want to try to ensure that our public and state offices and organizations that might be receiving state funding have guidelines and training around accessibility and understand what those qualities might be for different groups. And then we will also engage with state agencies, content creators and designers, the IT folks and the comms departments to ensure that we can be in compliance with the web content accessibility guidelines and enhance existing sites accessibility as well. The second objective in this goal is to establish local and tribal designated digital equity specialists. And so this starts to create a feedback loop for us across the state to ensure that as we move into the implementation of the plan, that we stay in alignment with local needs and the things that people are seeing on the ground. I want to take a moment with this objective because this is a position or a designation that we're hoping to create in tandem with our contacts across the state. Identifying these folks, it's sort of like our point person in every county, and hopefully in many, if not all, eventually of our tribal communities as well. We'll be able to have that person provide us feedback right away. And also we can use these folks to help disseminate, you know, information about implementation bits in the plan and all of that. So we are planning to create this cohort and support those people going through some sort of certification or a formal training to become what we're calling digital equity specialists. You know, those specific certifications and formal trainings haven't necessarily been fully identified yet, but for folks on this call who might be familiar with the Digital Inclusion Leadership Certificate that that ASU and the Marconi Society put together, it's something like that we would be looking at to ensure that these folks have the same baseline understanding and that we're all kind of coming from the same frame of reference for the work that we hope to do. And, you know, we would hope that through the capacity grant program, we would be able to support any, you know, scholarship or whatnot that is needed for these folks to participate. Corey, I see your hand.
Yeah, just to make sure I have this this digital equity specialist position correct in its function, is this intended to be more of a leadership position that will help implement programs across the locality or the tribal area or whatever the case is?
Yes, and so these would be people who would be identified in conjunction with, local government. We could work with, organizations in the area that are already doing this work, and we would help between, that conversation. We would identify our one person. So for example, Corey is our person in Yavapai, and if I ever need to do, anything in Yavapai, you're the first person I talk to. And then also, you would be able to get together with your counterparts across the state on a regular cadence with us to ensure that any implementation that's happening is in alignment with local needs. Any changes that need to be made, we could communicate that up and down, in a really effective way. It's sort of the idea, in government we use lean, right? And so it's like that cadence of the stand-up meetings. You have your local conversation first, and then all the leaders of that go up to the next one. This kind of creates that next level so that we can ensure that what we're doing at the state level, is always in coordination and in alignment with what's happening locally. And this would not be a position that we would expect to be a new funded position or anything like that in an organization. We're hoping to identify people who are already working in those spaces. I'm someone, in the library, let's say, or someone in the local government, someone in the, education, field, whatever it is that, they're already there, they already know their community. We wouldn't want to have to force, counties or anything to create a new position around this. It's mostly just a point of contact. Does that help? Yes. Okay, fantastic. Marilyn, I see your hand. Hi, Marilyn. How are you? Oh, I think you might be. Oh, there you are. No, you're good. Hi.
So yeah, I think your question. So, like with the work that we do with adult education, we already have people identified to support both digital equity and digital literacy initiatives. So it would be getting them specially certified in this system is what you're talking would be an example.
Yes. I will say that, there's still going to be those groups of people, like, for example, within the Department of Ed, you would have that group that's already working. Then we would know, in all of the county, one person would be this person. So, we would obviously, this is going to be a huge collaboration effort, where who that person is, right? Or who their potential designee is, because we totally understand, of course, that, putting one more monthly calendar meeting and all of that, might be difficult. So we just want to make sure that we know that one person in every county that we can start that conversation with and have that continuous interaction with. But yeah, someone, for example, in the Department of Ed that, was already that point person. This isn't to say that other people can't participate in that certification and things like that. In fact, I highly recommend that, going forward, that as a state, it'd be super awesome for us all to have that same baseline understanding of what we're talking about. And I will say, this is a little bit of a tangent, but, when I came into the official digital equity space, my experience is in libraries. So I know about, the digital literacy, the informal education, the connecting people with the resources, all of that, but I don't know as much about the BEAD side of things, right? And so having that, that baseline understanding was super important for me when I went through the certification, to just be able to have that understanding of what people are talking about, on both parts, because they all work together, as you're seeing very effectively in this call, right? So yes, and Elena, I agree, that course from ASU is absolutely fantastic. It is, it's not free though, and so I just want to put that out there that, that we understand that there would be a financial, burden to groups who are doing this. So, we don't know how much money we're getting for capacity yet, but this is one thing that we are hoping to be able to offer to the digital equity specialists. And I know that I've heard ASU talking about making a version of their curriculum available for more local use. And so maybe that's another opportunity that our digital equity specialist in every county could then help other organizations or other groups, like the point people within Department of Ed, for example, could all come together and take a version of a certification provided through that train the trainer model too. So yes, definitely. Paul, I don't want to miss your program here. What will be what will be the process to certify a training program? So that's a little TBD at this point, and it has a lot to do with the fact that we don't have the details around the capacity grant program yet, from the federal level, or obviously then from the local perspective. But we will identify what that process to certify will be as we get further down the path with this. So not pushing your question down the line, but that's a little to come yet. You're right. It is not the only potential provider. I was using that purely as an example, and we know that there are many. One other one that we're looking at, provided ACP related activities continue, is the ACP cohort from Education Superhighway. There are many opportunities out there, and it will be part of our evaluation to figure out which one is the best. So no, that's an excellent point. And I should have clarified, I was using it purely as an example, not as a, everyone is taking this. Thank you for bringing that up. Steve, I see your hand.
Yeah, so Aaron, I wanted to go back to Corey's question. And Corey, you guys did a great job in your community to bring people together, create a plan, and go after funding for broadband. And at least in my opinion, and those of you who've been around me enough know that I'm a big advocate of doing the same thing for digital equity, being able to create a digital equity team, bringing people together and creating a plan in a local community. And I believe to some extent that that's addressed later in the plan. But since this came up, I just thought I'd emphasize that I think that that's really important. Many of the communities, some who were on this call, have done a great job because they have created those broadband teams. In some cases, they had a leader. In some cases, they had to hire consultants. But either way, I believe that that's an important, if we're looking at sustainability for digital equity, as well as collaboration and effective use of resources, that I think that really has to happen at the local level also. So it's my 4 cents worth.
Do we owe you 2 cents back then? Goodness. Okay, awesome. Yeah, no, that is going to be key moving forward for sure, and hopefully you see, as you mentioned, as we go through the plan, there's space for some of that to be happening with support from the plan as well. Okay, I do want to go on here. We have quite a number of goals yet to tackle here. So I just want to share a little bit quicker, not to discount anything here, but there's a lot. So objective 3 within this goal is to support the local and tribal capacity for digital equity planning and activities. This basically creates the space for any local activities that are potentially in the works, or that folks are thinking about. Through our digital equity plan, we want to support those activities in whatever way that needs, right? So, creating a dashboard within our website, for example, to showcase and collect all of the local and tribal resources is an example of that. We are thinking of ways where, especially our tribal communities, can view language and cultural preservation through a digital equity lens. And so, supporting activities that are already happening within our state around this is the aim of this objective. Let's see here. click forward to the next one. The next objective is centered around increasing our telehealth access points and supporting health navigator services. So in case folks are not sure what telehealth access points are, these are locations where telehealth services can be accessed. So for example, our telehealth in libraries program that the state library supports is an example of these telehealth access points, creating the spaces within libraries that have the equipment necessary, the connection to the internet, a laptop or computer with a good camera, and also maybe some of the equipment that a doctor might encourage you to use throughout a telehealth appointment. For example, a stethoscope, a weigh scale, things like that, that the average person may not have at home. And so these locations kind of help support that telehealth access. And then health navigator services, this is a little bit different than a digital navigator in that they have the healthcare background as well, and supporting programs that offer those services. If you happen to be coming to the Internet for All event next week, we actually have a panel that discusses telehealth services and telehealth navigators in the state. And so we can get some more information there if you are attending. But this goal is really around, supporting the increase of access to telehealth. And many of those resources are still obviously very important. Even if you have access at home, you still might not have that knowledge, right? So the health navigator could help with that. You might not have that equipment, that's more medical in focus. And so, having those things available is what we're hoping to support with this. Steve, I see your hand.
Yeah, Aaron, so if I can put Mike Holcomb, I see he's on the call, can put him on the spot. So he is with the telemedicine program here in Arizona. I guess he's actually the acting director. And Mike, I don't know if you have anything that you want to comment about this particular issue.
And total side note, but Mike is actually presenting at Internet for All with us next week. So hi, Mike, nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you, Aaron, and everyone on the call. Yeah, thanks for a moment here. Just a couple of thoughts. We would be eager to partner with anyone in working on these particular areas. We've done some work primarily through Janet Major on our team, who is retiring shortly, just in a few days, and but have worked with Mala and the state library system to work on some telehealth access points. There's a resource that is national in scope that is operated by the Northwest Regional Telehealth Resource Center called Find Telehealth, that has basically it's a map. The entire country is not mapped for telehealth and healthcare providers at this point. It's limited to the Western states that have been funded for that. It is a fairly expensive prospect to populate that information, but there is the telehealth access point portion of the map that are public access points that can be added for anywhere in the country at no cost, and it's a free service to use. So I'll put that link in the chat, but just wanted to mention that that resource is available. I think there's only one listed for Arizona right now, but hopefully we can get some traction around people adding sites to that resource.
So Mike, I know you guys have often looked at the various grants and funding to expand telehealth in Arizona, and I assume that's going to continue.
Yeah, we are avid supporters of really any telehealth grant work, and happy to partner, provide letters of support, those types of things to try to aid in those efforts to secure grants for work around telehealth.
For those who don't know, the Arizona Telemedicine Program is one of the top telemedicine programs in the country, if not the number one. So they're just doing awesome work. And of course, our partner, Janet Major, who we're sorry to see go, but she's moving on, has done great work in working with the local communities and with the libraries and so forth.
Agreed. Corey, I see your question in the chat. Is that what your hand is up for, or can I just
Yes.
give you the, okay. So, are you looking to support TAPS and, oops, it just scrolled, and Health Navigator services through funding? So, you know, through the capacity grant program, which again, the exact details are still, unknown for us, that is a potential, you know, any applications to our capacity funding within the state, that directly align with our goals, you know, of course, are kind of what we're looking for. So yes, that's, you know, those exact details are of course yet to be determined, but, you know, we're hoping that they're just going to give us all the money and that we can do all the things, you know, but until we know what that dollar amount looks like, you know, and actually that's a good note, for this, because we write this plan and we come up with these goals before we know how much money we have. There will be, you know, a lot of conversation, of course, once we know what that money amount is, you know, if there needs to be changes to the priorities of the plan and things like that, that is part of the process from the state perspective up, you know, to the federal government. So, I just wanted to kind of name that. Yes. Yes, Janet is going to be sorely missed, but I don't think she's going to go too far. I mean, she'll still be involved. I don't think I don't think she can walk away that quickly. All right,
Yeah,
goal number 3. Oh,
Erin-
sorry. Go ahead.
Erin, this is Mala. Just a quick note to answer Corey's question. The part 1 you answered, you know, about the Health Navigator services funding. But if there's any other technical aspects that you would like, Corey, I'm handling it interim till we get someone someone new in our digital inclusion recruitment. But if you need to know anything about the pilot programs that we had so far and the lessons learned, I'm happy to share that with you or with anyone else who wants to participate in the telehealth program. Lots of ducks to get in a row before we actually, you know, implement. So I'm happy to help.
Thanks, Mala. Appreciate it.
Awesome. I don't want to skip forward. Are there any other comments or questions on what we've discussed so far?
Steve, I've got one short one for you, please.
Sure, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Erin, I'm not trying to be devil's advocate, so don't read me wrong, but are there any negative downsides that you're running into that need more attention that this group would be helpful in working on, or is that just overstating what really we don't need to engage in?
Well, right now, the thing that I desperately need from this group and every group that you know of is to read the plan and provide public comment. You know, that is key to this part of the process for sure. As far as the going forward parts, some of that, you know, is TBD, so I can't really answer that until I have more of those details. But you know, if there are things that you're considering, I'd be happy to, you know, to connect and we can go over things too.
All right, thank you.
Of course. And I didn't put the slide at the beginning, but at the end, there's a slide with all of our contact information. So in case you need any of our emails or anything like that, I'll be providing those shortly. Okay, so goal number 3 is around providing relevant digital literacy skills training tailored to the needs of the covered populations. And so the objectives in here, I saw, you know, some conversation around digital navigators and digital literacy upskilling up chat, and I didn't ignore it, but I wanted to wait until we got to the goals that talked about it. So this first objective is to increase digital literacy and skills in alignment with a learner's personal objectives. And we really feel that that is critical for encouraging adoption and meaningful use of this technology that people will have access to. You know, we have found through our conversations with digital navigators and with learners that individuals are they're much more inclined to maintain and expand those skills if they perceive a relevance in their daily lives. You know, it's it doesn't if there isn't an applicable use, then you know, it's more difficult for people to continue to be engaged with it. So our digital literacy skills training will be focused around how it connects to people's lives. Through that, the objective too is to strengthen our community support for learners through digital navigation service utilization. So this is where we will be working to increase the awareness of digital navigator programs around the state, a number of which, you know, have come up already in conversation, and also to increase the capacity of those programs to, you know, to ensure that folks, especially within the covered populations, are able to access the resources and are aware of what is available. We are hoping to incorporate an aspect of monitoring in, you know, the efficacy of our goals in our program through intake forms or through surveys, you know, distributed through our navigator services. You know, some of these goals and objectives will rely on that anecdotal, you know, data that's collected through conversations with our digital navigators and with the informal education setting. And so we will work to ensure that folks who are in those roles and having those opportunities to provide that data back to us are equipped to do that. We will also increase support to organizations that are serving folks across covered populations. You know, might not have a formal digital navigator program, but you know, these are our partners within the adult education realm and even K-12 who are working with folks who are in these covered populations. And then, of course, ensuring that any learning platforms and resources are available in preferred languages of the user, and also formats that work well for folks across our covered populations. So really just ensuring that, you know, the resources that are already out there are accessible, and increasing awareness of these offerings. Did that answer the questions? I think, was it Corey that asked about digital navigator support up chat? Was there anything else that
Well,
you had
I mean,
questions on?
it's the same question for me if there'll be funding for that. I mean, the
Yeah.
idea is, of course, if we can get some initial funding to implement a program, demonstrate that it's successful, we could continue with that program after BEAD goes away, is the hope, of course.
Yeah, and you know, same answer, which I'm sure you're used to hearing now. When we know more with those details, yes, these are the goals we're hoping to support through the capacity funding. So yes. Yep.
I guess one comment I have, Aaron, about the whole thing is you're talking about all kinds of programs with no estimates of what the costs of the programs are. I don't see how the federal government is going to, I mean, I imagine this is going on in other states as well, but I don't see how the federal government is going to determine how to allocate funds to states if they don't know how much the costs are of all these programs are. You know, there's no estimate of what the costs are, what the priorities are. How do they determine how much to allocate? And they only have very limited funding to allocate for all these programs. I think that's an issue that needs to be considered with the NTIA about all this.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question. And Nicole, if you want to provide more information about this, feel free. But I know that the allocation is based on the percentages of covered populations within the state. And so that, you know, it's a formula based on that, because every plan and every state's goals will be different. They aren't necessarily looking to allocate based on dollar amounts within a plan. It's about the percentages of covered populations. And then once we find out how much money we are getting, we'll go back to our plan. And if changes need to be made. That's kind of part of the process going forward. No state knows, at this point, how much money they're receiving. And so no state is attaching dollar amounts to specific programs because those priorities might change depending on how much money we get.
But the
So
money
these-
is very clearly limited. You only have 1.44 billion for all the states.
Yep.
I think in the capacity grant program, which I think, as I remember, is about only $29 million per state for the 5 years on average. So it just seems to me it's a very hard process for NTIA to go through and determine how to allocate funding, because you're going to have funding for devices, for digital literacy skills training, for navigators, for technical support. And if you don't have estimates of how you're going to provide these programs at what cost, then I don't see how they're going to make decisions about how to allocate this funding in any way that will come anywhere close to meeting the needs that are involved for all these covered populations. And another major problem I have with I imagine, like I say, I don't think it's probably unique to Arizona. It's probably all these plans is you have to have assessments of what are like you have a covered pop to track the success of these programs. You have to have an estimate of, it seems to me, by county, what is the size of the covered populations in each county? Like you have it statewide. It seems to me you should be estimating for each county, what is the size of the covered population in each county of all these 8 covered populations in each county to track the progress you're making in providing devices, digital literacy skills, training, technical support, and digital navigators. And I don't see that anywhere in the plan. It's like you have a statewide number, but not by county estimates. And then, so you need that to track the progress in the counties and estimate what the, what the cost would be of providing these services by county in an efficient way. And so I see like a lot of gaps there in all of all that tracking of the progress and in the data that you have and in the estimates of the costs of all these things. I'm wondering if there needs to be more. I don't know if there's a second phase to how you're going to be going about this, but I don't see how NTIA is going to decide whether they're going to be meeting all these needs, whether they're going to be, in terms of the money that they allocate from these high-level goals that don't specify the costs involved to do this, particularly by county. So I think that's something that needs to be discussed more with NTIA, and I imagine it's a problem of all the states in the way they're approaching this, asking for all kinds of programs without assessing how much it's going to cost and what funding is available, the limited funding that's available.
So some of this will come in, the capacity grant application part. Because the point from the state perspective is to support work that's happening and scale work that's happening. And so some of those estimates will need to come from the program providers, right? As opposed to us dictating how much something is going to cost. We are not intending to necessarily create new programs. We're hoping that our partners and our assets within the state who are doing this work daily are the ones who will be supported by the capacity grants. So a little of that is not for us, as in the writers of the plan, to dictate. As far as funding allocation is concerned, That's a great question for NTIA. And I don't know if Nicole can provide any additional information on that, but I know that the overall allocation is based on percentages of covered population within the state. We do break down our plan and our needs assessment by county in our county profile section, but ultimately everything rolls up to a state view from NTIA's perspective. And so we tried to do both in our plan. I do appreciate the need to put some of that statistical analysis around the counties from our perspective, because we know the differences in the counties, and we know the urban centers versus the rural areas, et cetera, have very different needs. And that's an excellent comment. I think that that is something that we are considering doing, adding county specific data around the covered populations. So thank you for bringing that up. And I would encourage you to submit that as a formal public comment so that we can track that.
Erin, can I add something here?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. As it pertains.
Candace, can you please introduce yourself quickly?
Hi, sure. I am Candace Hamana. I am part of the team here with Erin, Cindy, Perla, Crystal, and Vanessa. We're with the state broadband team. And I am the tribal liaison here at the Arizona Commerce Authority. With respect to tribes and this digital equity plan, I think that the approach that we're taking is first understanding that, tribes have their own government and systems and services that they provide to their members. For example, and as it serves as an relates to the increasing support to organizations serving individuals across covered populations that provide informal and formal digital skills training. The Dona Otham Community College already has an existing program. It's actually an internet subscription service that's provided by the Dona Otham Utility Authority, and they've got partners. But this program has been in place, and through the TOCC, through their community college there, they offer their members, 6 months of training with digital literacy. And there's 3 levels there. I think when it comes to, doing this work and making it feel inclusive from a tribal perspective, it's not going to be our approach to come in and tell them this is what you need to do. Quite frankly, there are some fantastic systems and services and programs that the tribes have already provided to their community members. It's really just being able to reach out to them, when we understand what that allocation or what the funding could look like, and see how we might be able to support their efforts as they are providing that service to their enrolled communities. So as Erin was saying, we're not trying to go in and reinvent the wheel. It's really about making sure that we're tapped into the existing networks and the existing organizations that are already doing this work, and really just amplifying it. And making sure that there's increased awareness that serves that covered population, that organization exists, and that they're already doing the work. So it's how are we able to amplify that work and their contribution to, bridging this digital divide in rural and tribal communities.
Erin, we should probably keep moving on. We only have less than a half hour left.
I know. Yes, agreed. And thank you, Candace, for that perspective. I think you said it very well. It's like we're hoping that organizations across the state serving these covered populations see their work in the goals that we're providing so that we can support them through the capacity grant program. Yep. Thank you. Yes, Steve, I know I have a lot to do yet, don't I? Okay. All right. I'm not going to, I don't want to rush through the goals. I think what I'd like to do at this point is maybe encourage folks to definitely take a look at the remaining goals in the plan itself, and then maybe we can skip forward into a couple other aspects of the plan. I love this feedback, though. This is the kind of stuff that we want to hear. So generally, you know, we're hoping to ensure workforce development opportunities, both for jobs created by the BEAD program, as well as other workforce development aspects. In goal 4, this
I'm
one,
sorry, Aaron, I'm gonna
go ahead.
interrupt you again to go back to the workforce, because I know there's been a lot of questions about the workforce plan and issues and stuff like that. And I know there's a couple of people on this call who are particularly interested in workforce. So does anybody have any questions or comments about workforce development?
And maybe what I would encourage at this point too, just so that we can ensure that we are talking about the other aspects, is folks who have specific questions that you know, that maybe we don't have quite as much time to dive into, we can set up separate conversations as well. And I will be sharing our contact information shortly. I just want to show that there is space for it in the plan. Okay, so goal 4 is around privacy and security of digital spaces. So this is around the idea of online safety and encouraging folks to understand cybersecurity and their agency in keeping themselves safe when they're navigating online. Again, you know, a space for community partners and community anchor institutions to help us disseminate this information to our communities. Goal 5 gets into affordable devices, specifically that meet the needs of the user. And again, I know there's a section that a lot of folks on this call have a vested interest in, so let's find some time. I'm looking at you, Mariana. If you, you know, would like to have a separate conversation, we would encourage that and welcome it. Objective 1 within this section is to increase the affordability of devices. You know, this is really about awareness for organizations that are providing subsidized or free devices. This is, you know, device distribution and, you know, leaning into refurbishing and things like that. Objective 2, again, matching the needs, the device to the needs of the individual, you know, kind of going back to the digital literacy skills section, you know, there's a reason why there's a vast array of devices, and encouraging those conversations with digital navigators and others that are working directly with users to identify what those needs are and finding appropriate devices. We are talking at a state level, of course, about creating minimum requirements and that kind of conversation around this. Folks who work in this space will be our very important partners, of course, to make sure that whatever, you know, device requirements are needed is what is being provided. All right. And third objective in this section is around device distribution, working with our partners who, you know, provide the refurbished devices and doing outreach. You know, again, this is hopefully a space where organizations in the state see their work and see how, you know, the capacity grants could amplify and increase the impact that organizations in the state can have with our covered populations. So goal 6, this is the last big bucket here. This is where we get into the monitoring and evaluation of impact of what we're laying out in the plan and our progress towards achieving digital equity. So this is the part that gets a little difficult to, you know, to quantify without some of these other steps in place where we have more baseline data. You know, we understand that a number of our goals and objectives would benefit from further assessment and further baseline data collection. And so we are making space for that. We can use a portion of our capacity grant funding to continue that process. And so we do intend to. But we are naming the fact that, of course, we can only see our progress and see if we're succeeding if we have that data in place and we're continually evaluating our work. And so we're leaving space for that. Second objective here is, of course, around continuous engagement. And I'm going to skip over this kind of quickly. That's gone over the last year. So as I mentioned earlier, our contractors helped us with data collection through listening sessions. We also hosted our community roundtable conversations that many of you have been a part of from the ACA, and we did survey the community as well. And now, as we mentioned before, we are in our public comment phase. And so this is the time where we really, of course, encourage folks to take time to read the full plan. We know it's long, and thank you, but grab your popcorn and make a day of it. And we're hoping that we get a lot of really good public comment through this so that we can ensure that the plan is meeting the needs of the folks in our communities. Next, I would like to briefly discuss our engagement plan going forward. So this was also detailed in the BEAD 5-year action plan and initial proposal. So if you'd like more information on this, it's in both places now. But we are engaging in a statewide in-person outreach over the course of the next year. Briefly, I'll go over the top part, and then I'd like to tag in Candace again to speak to the tribal engagement pieces. So in the course of the next year, we are going to be visiting all of the regions. You can see how it's broken out here by a quarter, but the different areas that we are planning to go to. And so, of course, we are already in Q1. So we are working on identifying more specific information about these visits, and information about that will be shared as it becomes more cemented. Candace, would you like to speak about the tribal engagement at all?
Hi, yes. So working in tandem with the outreach that we're going to be doing to the counties and the local municipalities, we definitely want to be accessible in-person points of contact for the tribal communities, the tribal nations in Arizona. So what we did was we basically correlated the different tribal communities that are in the same areas. So for example, in Q1, we'll be out visiting or engaging the members of the Navajo Nation Shiprock Agency, the Navajo Nation Chinle Agency, and Fort Defiance Agency. I think that when we took this approach, we just understand that Navajo Nation is the largest tribe in the country, with over 500,000 enrolled members. And so we really have to take a little bit more time to make sure that everyone is feeling like they're getting the same information and being able to, move along with this process that is a statewide outreach effort. And then over the next course of the remaining quarters, we'll be branching out beyond Navajo Nation, and the Hopi tribe will actually get into the eastern regions, and then down with the engagement of the southern Arizona tribes, before making our way out towards the tribes that border along, the Arizona and California states. So you've got the Colorado River Indian tribes, and then down into Yuma. So really trying to be intentional and also make sure that we're going to be having the most impact as we travel as a team through the different areas of the state.
Thank you so much. And of course, we are also planning to continue hosting our community roundtable conversations. We will continue, of course, to participate in the Governor's Interagency and Community Broadband Advisory Council and working groups, and state agency coordination meetings on a regular cadence as we have been. We will also participate in organizations around the institutions of higher education, and those coordination meetings as necessary, and as requested, of course. Any engagements with our tribal colleges and local educational agencies. And then, of course, any stakeholder meetings as requested, and we're obviously always in the AZBSN space, the AIDEN space. If there are other locations that we should be, please feel free to invite us, and we will be where we are needed and wanted. Sometimes we'll just show up anyway. But this is key. We don't always know where all the meetings are, especially of the coalitions and, those working groups. And so we encourage folks to let us know and to invite us. All right, so I did want to briefly go over the timeline again. As I mentioned, we are in the public comment phase right now. Public comment will be available through February 1st. So end of the day, February 1st, we will shut it off. And then we will address our public comments and make any changes to the plan as needed and submit that plan to NTIA mid-February for what they refer to as a curing period, where there's some additional back and forth with NTIA, and then final submission occurs at the end of March. And so that is kind of where we are right now. We encourage you to submit feedback via our website, through email, or by leaving us a voicemail. And I'm going to show you that information here briefly, but I wanted to share our contact information before closing out of the slideshow part. So you'll see up at the top there are everybody gets the broadband emails, and so that is an excellent place to get a hold of all of us all at once. That is where we encourage you to submit public comment, again, for tracking. And then you'll also see all of our individual contacts here on the screen. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop this share and end my slideshow real quick. And then I am going to make sure the right screens are up. I'm going to reshare. I briefly want to show you what the website looks like and all of that aspect. So now you should be seeing on my screen the Arizona Commerce Authority's website. Down along the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see all of the navigation and a link right here for the Arizona Digital Equity Plan. So this is where you can access the full plan, of course, by clicking on this View Digital Equity Plan link, and that opens up a new tab with the full 200-page PDF for you to read at your leisure. One really great thing about the way that this is set up is the table of contents is hyperlinked. So if there are specific aspects that you want to dive further into, for example, the goals and objectives, you can click right on it and you'll get to the draft version of the full thing here. And just to note, since we had some conversation around those measurable objectives, you'll notice here that in our plan, there are more detailed information around our KPIs, our current baseline data, and what those targets look like. So this is the full version. The part that I put on the slides was kind of the narrative version of our goals and objectives. So definitely take a look at those areas. And then on the screen, you will also see the modes by which you can provide your public comment. So you can simply fill out this form right here with as much of your contact information as you're able to provide us. We are very interested in finding out if our public comments are coming from folks who identify as belonging to or serving any of the covered populations. So definitely take a look at that section and ensure that you are letting us know if you are identifying that way. And then there's space here to let us know which part of the plan you're commenting on. That'll be really helpful for us when we go back to integrate. We have received quite a number of comments that are general comments about the entire plan. And of course, you can say that as well, especially folks I saw in the chat that have, you know, a lot of comments. You can say the entire plan, and then in your comments, you can also tell us what section. And then there's a nice little comment box here where you can type or copy paste your comments and submit. Another option for you would be to download and fill out the fillable PDF version of that same web form. It is exactly the same as what I just showed you on the website. You can take the time, you know, offline and fill in your comments here, and then either email it back to us, or you can upload it through this function here on the website and submit it to us. You can also give us a call. We have our phone number on here, and there should be a way to leave a voicemail for us there. And regardless of how you submit, we transcribe or save the exact comments, and that goes into a document that does get shared back with NTIA. I will note that NTIA gets the identifying information, but that information is not made public. So there's two versions of the public comment. There's the section where we track everything that we received and what our response was to it. And then you'll also see in the final draft of the plan, a section in our public comment description that takes out all of the identifiers, kind of lumps the comments together into major themes if we see that, or addresses individual comments and how we updated the plan accordingly. But of course, in that public facing version, there will be no publicly or personally identifiable information, of course. Let's see here. A couple other things in the near future that I wanted to highlight. I do want to acknowledge that due to the timeline and various other factors, we were only able to provide the draft of the plan in English and only through the PDF on our website. We understand that that is not the most equitable way to approach that. And so I just want to let everyone on this call know that we are working on ways to share the final plan in a more equitable fashion, including translating it, and also hopefully in partnership with Sun Sounds and the State Library, making an audio version and providing alternative modes of for folks across the state to engage with our plan. We will also be creating kind of like, I don't want to call it this, but like the Cliff's Notes version of the plan that is significantly shorter and kind of goes through the highlights of the plan. Once the plan is approved, those steps will start to happen as well. So I would like to open it up if there are any final comments, questions, or anything else that we can help with in the last few minutes of this. But before I do that, I just want to say thank you, Steve, again, for creating the space for us to have this conversation. It's super important for us, of course, to get as much feedback as we possibly can on the plan, because we want to make sure that it's truly, you know, answering the needs of our community. So Vaughn, I see your hand up.
Yeah, real quick, Aaron, and thank you for all that great information. I'm approached from top, well, periodically I'm approached here in Pima County from an organization that engages in by term digital literacy. Both what is it, how do I use it, how do I engage it, and then when I'm into it, then how do I benefit from it? I was kind of in and out on your presentation. I apologize. If you covered that concept of training that might be out there for the general public, that's my question.
Yes. So in our goals, we are definitely creating space to increase the work of groups like that across the state. And, you know, also hopefully through the capacity grant program, helping them upscale their upskilling opportunities. There's a sentence for you. But yes, The easy answer is yes. We are hoping to increase the awareness of groups like that and the work that they're doing, and also increase the use by groups who would benefit, within the covered populations and across the state.
Aaron, I'm going to interrupt now. I want to cover a couple of things real quickly. First of all, again, the summit is coming up next week. I believe the first day is sold out, if I'm not mistaken.
It is,
The
yep.
second day, there's still space available. So that's the first thing. Secondly, for those of you who are looking at your screen, you might see NDIA, and that is not the NDIA that most of us know. And if I can take 2 minutes, Michael Shivers to join us. Michael is very engaged in cybersecurity. And Michael, if you just want to introduce yourself real quickly and about what NDIA is, because it's not the NDIA we all know.
Thank you, Steve. My name is Michael Shivers. I am the president of the NDIA, which is the National Defense Industrial Association, and our territory covers Arizona, Utah, and New Mexico. And we are a 100-year-old organization with chapters in pretty much every major city. And we're basically kind of joined at the hip with military and things to do with military. However, as a chapter president, we like to look at local initiatives, the things that have to do with, where we live and work. And I've met Steve at a couple of our conferences, Cyber Southwest, and he's been inviting me to these meetings for about a couple of years now, and I apologize for not being able to meet, but I recently retired, so it has freed up a lot of time for me to do these types of things, but I still keep my hand in it. My areas, I guess, of expertise would be cybersecurity and workforce development, and I did want to find out a little bit more about what the skill sets as far as workforce development, what are you all trying to achieve as far as workforce development? That's something that's near and dear to my heart as far as education goes. And what NDIA can do to bring its power to bear to help you achieve these goals.
Great. Thank you, Michael, and thanks for joining us. And then
Thank you, Michael. I just want to address the workforce question really quick because that is obviously a large portion of the goals there. Specifically around the digital literacy aspects needed for folks who might be entering the workforce, especially around the BEAD implementation. So there is a lot of technical stuff, obviously I use stuff lovingly, that goes into that side of things. Maybe we can find some time to chat offline about some of those details. But, again, as with many parts of the plan, it's sort of, we're glad that you see yourself in the goals, and then we can figure out how to increase the impact that various groups are having in the state in those spaces. So
okay, so the last thing I have is Cindy. Are you still there? You want to just tell people quickly about the 8-in meeting this afternoon?
Sure. Yes, I'm Cindy Hogan. I'm the chair of the Arizona Digital Inclusion Network, called AIDN. And this afternoon at 12, we're going to be going through aspects of the plan to present, to develop and present our own comments to the state for their use in updating and working through the draft and getting it to the final stage. So if you would like to do that, I can put my email in the chat and you can contact me and get on our Zoom list, and appreciate all of the discussion today. Great job, Aaron.
thank you.
So last thing, Aaron, good job, great job. And thanks to all the broadband office team. Thank you for all being here today. And thanks to all the rest of you. And hopefully I'll be able to see most of you next week in Mesa. Anything else anybody else needs to comment or share before we end? We have about 2 minutes left. I guess we're done.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate the time, and please do submit those public comments. We really appreciate it. And we hope that you know, see your work in our plan. Thank you.
Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.